How about the situation in the Gulf? Is there an opportunity there for you? Has there been an opportunity? I mean, had you gone short BP on April 20th, you would have made a lot of money.
We haven't played BP in any way, shape, or form, short or long.
How about any of the other drillers, producers, servicers?
No, we're not. We're not involved in any way, shape, or form in the crisis. But we have looked at BP, but we're like a lot of us, we're scratching our head. I think there's too many unknowables still. We are short some of the majors. We're just not short BP. Interestingly, if you look at
this predates April 20th?
Predates it, and it has to do with financials. If you look carefully at some of the biggest oil companies in the world, and I'll let you use your own imagination as to which ones those are, but it's not hard.
There's a small handful.
There's a small handful. And if you look at their cash flow statements relative to their income statements, you will see companies that haven't replaced reserves in years and haven't seen any increase in revenues in years, and yet their capital spending eats up all of their cash flow, meaning they're borrowing their dividend. They're in effect liquidating. And investors don't realize that. It's one of the reasons why the market does to some extent. It's why the yields are so high. But they're not earning in economic terms, in many cases, those yields. And if people did a careful analysis of the cash flows of some of the biggest and most well-regarded integrated oil majors, I think they would be surprised at what they find. The issue is, of course, that the UAW owns big chunks of GM and Chrysler. They don't own as proportionally any Ford to speak of. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how it is that the union, which controls the employees, and I contend these entities are still run for their employees and the retirees more than the shareholders, are going to look in an environment going forward where the UAW is a major equity holder in some of the other entities. It adds a new dynamic to the twist, definitely.
So do I take that to mean you're short Ford?
I think that would be a logical conclusion.
I'm curious to know how long you've had that position.
We've been short the automakers in a major way since, I believe, 03 or 04. Less so in the midst of the crisis when there are bankruptcies, and we are starting to add to positions again now, and in the past 3 months, 4 months.
Okay, so what we discussed earlier about Ford is reflected in the
2010,
adding to positions in the last 3 to 4 months, based on your view that GM's going to come out of bankruptcy, it's going to be public.
And you've got UAW contract negotiations in 2011 that people are forgetting about. 2010 has been a struggle a little bit. So there's been a lot of situations, high-risk assets that have gone up and stayed up, and there's been a lot of value stocks that have actually gone down. So really since March of 2009, where the risk trade, as people have said, has gone on, we're back to the shorts struggling again, generally speaking, on a fundamental basis. We are taking positions across the board in a variety of different markets. Now, up until very recently, it was difficult to get short in the Chinese mainland market. So you had to do it through the Hong Kong market, some shares in Singapore, some shares trade in the U.S., and some shares trade in London. The bigger positions you could take, of course, were in either Hong Kong listed H shares or in what we call the first derivatives, which are some of the commodity plays of companies that sell into China, like some of the mining companies, for example. We haven't gotten close to capitulation time on this one. There's still a lot of people who have a lot invested, both financially and psychologically, in China. You know, it is perceived as the great up-and-coming country, and the country that's going to pull us all out of our debt-laden morass. And if that doesn't happen, I think a lot of people are going to have to reevaluate their investment philosophies. What I do have a problem with, personally, is the hedge fund industry or the private equity industry or the venture capital or the real estate, all private capital, asking for and still getting to some extent lower tax rates on certain forms of income that I believe are income, not returns on capital, than, say, teachers, soldiers, firemen, policemen.